from the light of the sun. A nasty burn now, isn't that fun? Swim in the ocean, run on the beach, drown in the surf and blood like a leech. We have no time for merrymaking. Chop off the head for badness sake, sell for a limb, batter and bake. Nasty spells of bubonic night. Come close and see what's hidden from sight. Something festering in my bed bugs dancing on my...
It is surprisingly way too hot right now in California. Literally 2 days ago, it was raining like a son of a bitch, and now it's crazy hot again. It's like we haven't left summer yet. And this is it. The final week of my Halloween specials. On the bright side, I'll be playing a lot of catch-up on the movies on the new releases that I've been missing out on. And it'd be nice to do single reviews again. Not to mention, my next rapid fire is still going to be kind of horror themed, so kind of see it as a last hurrah type of deal. In any case, happy Halloween everybody! Welcome to Get Busy Watching. I'm your host, Honest Dan. Let's talk scary movies.
Halloween, I want to die on Halloween. Under the bridge of goblin waits, she never sleeps or hesitates.
A mockumentary starring Taika Waititi as a vampire living with other vampires trying to navigate life in the modern age.
Starting with a certain deacon.
I will do my dishes! Good to do that!
This was great! I might have to check out the TV show now. Though my coworker recently said that it's not bad, it's just not as good as the movie, but I'm still gonna try and check it out at some point. It's as much a love letter to the vampire genre as it is a satire of it. And it's got some amazing filmmaking techniques. What's not to love? This had me hooked within the first few seconds as Taika is doing the upright wake up from the coffin thing, but looks like he's struggling to do it right and looking a bit embarrassed doing so. Man, I love this dude, whether he's acting or directing, but someone get him off Twitter before he sabotages his own Star Wars movie. Anyway, this brand of humor is persistent throughout the film. Maybe not every joke splits my side, but the utter charm of each individual character, as well as when they bounce off of each other, there is always a smile on my face. Just to be clear, there isn't a specific story being told. It's literally just a day-in-the-life story of these vampires while being filmed by an unseen documentary crew. It's basically a 90-minute pilot to a sitcom that would ultimately get made, I guess. But this is not a bad thing. Though this isn't a gore fest per se, there are some surprisingly fun death scenes. The costumes are perfectly outlandish yet sophisticated, the makeup for Peter is wonderful, and the practical effects are cheesy yet fantastic.
Oh, it's a spinal column, yuck. And I was thinking maybe I should just bring a broom down here for you if you wanted to sweep up.
I have but one complaint. And considering where we are in 2021, it's kind of an outdated complaint, but for personal integrity, I'm still gonna mention it. It stops. It doesn't really end, it just stops. The credits started rolling and I damn near screamed at my computer, wondering if an entire act was missing. I guess if I really wanted to fish for negatives that no one actually cares about, I would have wanted to see the werewolves actually kill people and really see the werewolf suits in their entirety. And the banshees doing banshee stuff at the gathering in the third act. But those are the truest of nitpicks if anyone's ever heard them.
Count to 10, human again. 10,
it's alright, it's not full moon. Thanks a lot, guys. Enjoy your night.
Shame yourselves, man.
Great. We didn't want this to happen.
This was fantastic, and I would totally consider making this an annual watch for Halloween. This was right up my alley. Humorous, legitimately great filmmaking that kind of blew my mind in some scenes, and I can't recommend this enough. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And no joke, I might add this to my list of my favorite horror films of all time. My honest rating for What We Do in the Shadows, a 5 out of 5.
They accept me for who I am, and I accept them for who they are. And even though one of them killed me,
story full of betrayal. A headless horseman covered with snails.
This shouldn't need an introduction, but here we go anyway. This nice teenage girl and her friends are haunted in their dreams by the burnt, ghostly child killer, Freddy Krueger.
Please, God.
This is God.
For whatever reason, I've just never really been that interested in the Elm Street movies. And now that I've actually sat down to officially watch this, I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, it hits a few cliches that I don't appreciate, but let's just talk about it. Maybe it'll hit me then. Starting with positives, this is an incredible gimmick for a slasher killer. He's a ghost that kills you in your dreams. How messed up is that? People need sleep. People are sometimes compelled to sleep the longer they stay awake, and the longer you do, the more fatigued you get. The idea is fantastic. And the subtlety of dozing off only to wind up realizing that you are asleep, being helpless when you see someone dying and suffering right in front of you, all of this is terrifying. To complement the idea, you have one of the best horror icons of the 80s, Freddy Krueger, as played by the living legend and best friend to Luke Skywalker himself, Robert Englund. Great idea, great monster, all that's left is whether or not the victims are worth their weight in screams. And, yeah, kinda. I'll get to them later. But I do concede that Nancy is a pretty solid protagonist. She's sweet-natured, yet strong-willed, vulnerable, but courageous. Heather Langenkamp's performance is so good, you want her to make it out of this whole thing alive.
Hey, Nancy. No running in the hallway.
Okay, so I'll never call this a bad movie. I don't think anyone should. It's actually a very well-made movie. So, why do I still feel a little underwhelmed by it? I think I have an answer, and I don't think you fan folks are gonna like it. I think where the movie falls short for me are the cliches, which did irritate me. Rod, the obnoxious toxic boyfriend, felt like a caricature, what with his voice and the way he acted. I have no idea if that's just Nick Corey's voice or if that's how he was directed, but it was hard to take him seriously. As much as I really like Nancy, she had a tendency to rely too much on unreliable characters, including her boyfriend, Johnny Depp, her parents. It's just a little annoying for my taste. Though I guess I blame the writing more than the character. And that final act where it becomes a goofy R-rated Home Alone before Home Alone was a thing just sort of took me out of it and turned Krueger into a joke, not a threat. This might have worked when the franchise became more meta and comedic, but this specific installment was supposed to be scary, and yet it hits some really dumb low points. And there's even a few inconsistencies with Krueger's powers. Tina's death made sense, but Rod was awake. Glenn was also awake, or at least the deaths are clearly displayed in the real world as opposed to the dream world. I really want to love this as much as other people do, and in more than a few ways, I do. There's more than a few frames in this movie that, if you saw them, it couldn't be anything else. It couldn't be mistaken for anything else other than Nightmare on Elm Street. And for an 80s slasher flick where there was just an abundance of standout monsters, that's impressive. In fact, I would even argue that Elm Street is the best of the 80s slasher films. But what hurts me the most are the cliches. You would think that 90% of this movie is pure genius, that it would be too good to have mundane cookie-cutter characters making stupid choices, but bizarrely it wasn't. I'm sorry, lovers of this franchise and this movie in particular, but I just can't love it like everyone else does. I understand where the love comes from. I'm never going to tell the fan folks that they're wrong. In fact, you're not, but for my taste, for as many horror films as I've seen, as many as I've seen just this month, I feel a little let down. Just a little, though. My honest rating for Nightmare on Elm Street, a 4 out of 5.
Come to Freddy. Find
sleepless night. Feels so good to have a bad fright.
This world has telepaths. They're called scanners, and they're also considered to be freaks. Baby-faced Michael Ironside is a bad scanner who kills important people. This dude is recruited by this dude to find Michael Ironside and put an end to his evil deeds.
They're all pathetic social misfits, unstable, unreliable.
That is because their unique gifts are not understood, Mr. Keller.
Not bad. I mean, I don't think it's as good as I wished it was. It's a little undercooked, especially considering the meme that would come from this, but it's still pretty solid. What I appreciate is the story. You have Michael Ironside as an evil psychic guy who kills people in high positions of power. The cynic in me thinks this isn't a bad thing, but I enjoy the idea of an average Joe, who is also a scanner, is tasked with infiltrating Ironside's evil group and bringing him down. Truly. And despite the incredible amount of Jack Daniels that was in me at the time that I wrote this review, I really like this idea. It's paced well and has some interesting and unique ideas regarding telepaths.
I don't know how they can let creatures like that in here. Really.
I was pretty drunk when I wrote this review, so now that I'm sober, I do have my complaints that hold this back from being a legitimately great film, at least in my eyes. This is the kind of movie that strived to be a meme, well before memes even existed, rather than having anything truly substantial. And it's not even like the pieces weren't there, especially considering my taste in storytelling. A protagonist who goes with the flow rather than consistently questioning every damn thing, and just does what he's supposed to do. Kim Obrist seems to know what she's doing, so that's not the problem. All that's fine. What isn't is the lack of memorable characterization. Yes, I know that I said that I like the protagonists, but there's no real development. They just serve, I hate to say this word, but functions. Need a good guy character? That's Cameron. He serves his purpose, but that's about it. Need a strong female protagonist? Kim fits the bill. Beyond all that, the antagonists are more memorable. Of course, Ironside, but there's also Keller, who, as a dude without superpowers, seems to have good ideas on how to screw with scanners. I think that's the biggest problem that I have with the story. The pieces are there, but they don't always connect.
At the age of 22, he was extremely self-destructive. Now, at the age of 35, he is simply destructive.
Despite my reservations, I do think it's worth checking out. Not sure if I would call it a horror film, but rather a thriller with kind of a scary edge to it. But honestly, I recommend it if you haven't seen it. My honest rating for Scanners, a 4 out of 5.
Something reaching down the hall. Watch your step, you'll have a great fall.
The immortally gorgeous Michelle Pfeiffer believes she's seeing the ghost of a young dead woman, but receives no support from her husband, Harrison Ford, as she tries to figure out what the ghost wants.
It's haunted.
No.
Wait a minute. Who do you think it is?
I know exactly who it is.
I feel like I've seen a similar movie before, but I just can't put my finger on it. Anyway, I really like this one. It is so good, but it is so flawed, and way longer than it needed to be. Starting with the negatives, this movie took a long time to figure out what it wanted to be. It bizarrely starts off being a Rear Window knockoff, with Pfeiffer being convinced that James Remar killed his wife Miranda Otto and her adorable baby face. I feel like this was supposed to set up the possibility that the paranormal stuff that Michelle experiences later might be in her head, that she's mentally unstable. I suppose this could have worked if that beginning was condensed a little bit more. It just felt like a whole psychological thriller got replaced with a ghost movie a quarter of the way through. And frankly, that first quarter could have been cut out completely and the rest of the story would have ran silky smooth.
Are you all right?
But for all the nonsense that was the first act, even those negatives still have some kind of positivity woven into them. As for the rest of the movie, it's still pretty damn good. As I said, even though that first act was pointless, it still had both James Remar and Miranda Otto, a pair of my favorite underrated actors of all time. Despite these being roles that they could have done in their sleep, both Pfeiffer and Ford knock it out of the park and really add gravitas to the material. Though the scares are pretty minimal, when they do happen, they're really effective. And by the time the third act rolls around, it is so perfect in terms of effective jump scares, dramatic tension, and much more. As unnecessary as that first act is, the final act is pure horror perfection.
She was at the DuPont party, staring at me. It was her. That's why I couldn't breathe.
I hate the first half hour. Skip it and you miss nothing. Except James Remar and Miranda Otto. So maybe it's not worth watching? In any case, the rest of this is good, with spikes of greatness. 21 years I've been wanting to see this. Boy, do I feel like I was missing out. My honest rating for What Lies Beneath, a strong 4 out of 5.
What do you want?
Oftentimes we blow off dead when we wake the sky turns red.
James Donahue, the younger brother of Heather Donahue from Project, goes to Burkittsville, Maryland with his friends to look for his missing sister after her found footage was uploaded to the internet.
And what about the legends?
Legends?
Yeah, do you believe at all in the stories about the Blair Witch?
I don't like it. Which is weird to say because it technically delivers on everything that I wish the first movie did. You know what this is? The first movie is like a ham sandwich, just white bread and a slab of ham. And that's it. It does the job, but it's boring. It's not special. This movie has a lot more going for it. You got wheat bread, you got cheese, you've got bacon, avocado, egg, everything you'd want on this thing. But then you look a little closer and you see the truth. The bread is old. The ham is expired. The cheese is moldy. The bacon is charcoal and the mayo is yellow colored. Basically,
is this how you get your sick kicks? What? It's just an ordinary crabby... Oh my goodness!
I mean, I thank God that this is still better than Book of Shadows, kind of. And the fact that I say kind of does not bode well for this movie. But let's face it, Book of Shadows it sets the bar so low that even tripping over it still counts as getting over it. Before you ask, no, in the original, Heather Donahue never referenced any family, so throwing in James as a brother is just an excuse to give the central character an emotional stake in the story. Nothing wrong with that per se, but the problem is that his motivations get pushed way the hell out of the story until the final act. In the meantime, these could have been any ordinary characters getting exposed to the Blair Witch. Had that been the case, I think this would have been at least a little better. But if that was my only issue with the flick, then it would have been good. And boy howdy is it not. I guess I can appreciate that this does try to do something different in terms of the Blair Witch mythos, so it's not a one-to-one rehash of the original, but like my SpongeBob analogy suggests, it tries too many different things. Time distortion, body horror, it's just a bit much, and none of it truly connects. Much as I don't care about the original, it knew to keep the horror in the imagination of the viewer, not knowing if what these people were going through was the result of the paranormal or the psychological. Oh, this one definitely brought all kinds of unnatural to the table, but it backfires in disappointing fashion.
When was the last time you saw us?
Earlier this afternoon.
I'm not lying. It's been 5 days since we saw you.
I'm trying to think. Are there any positives worth pointing out? Not really, but if you really wanted me to fish for them, here's what I got. I enjoy the characters. They are quite clearly one-dimensional and have the personalities of Kiwi, but I like Kiwi. So there's that. The aforementioned body horror can be effective, including the brief reveals of the monster. Nah, that's it. It's not very good. It overcompensates on giving the audience more when less was required. It's not insultingly bad, I guess. In fact, there are a few ideas that could have been good if it was focused on, but that's not what we get here. If you're like me and you didn't much care about the original Blair Witch Project, this isn't going to change your mind. If you are a fan of the original, I am so sorry your sequels suck so much. My honest rating for Blair Witch, a weak 3 out of 5. Sandra Bullock is surviving in a world full of unseen monsters, but if you look at them, they either drive you to kill yourself or others.
Code grade, level 1.
I kind of like it, mostly because of Sandra Bullock. I love Sandra Bullock. I've been simping on this woman since well before I had hair on my...
Whoa there, chap. Not safe for work.
A very long time now. That's definitely what I was about to say. As for the movie itself, it's not a bad gimmick. Has some good moments and some messed up imagery. Some hilarious imagery as well. But more often than not, you get cookie-cutter characters that you don't even really like. And what few that you do make really dumb decisions, as most horror movies seem to love doing. As previously stated, I really like the premise. Whatever these monsters are, they're completely invisible and there's no real way to fight back other than to not look at them, creating a very challenging world to literally navigate. Even if you manage to learn how to keep yourself blindfolded and on the move with no problems, there's the insane people that don't wear blindfolds who kill you by forcing you to look at the monsters. In many ways, it's the perfect setup. And of course, Sandra Bullock carries this film like the champ that she is. I like the cynicism and harshness of Mallory, yet her unwillingness to fall completely into being a terrible person. I also enjoy John Malkovich as the guy who totally owns being a terrible person, weirdly making him one of the more righteous characters. On the surface, these characters are likable.
I hope there is more.
Here's to hoping there is more.
But like any review that I do where I say the ideas are good and the main actors are good, chances are there's a lot more negatives to talk about, and by God are there. I can't stand how stupid some of these characters are. In nearly every situation they're in, I can point to a dozen answers to these scenarios that would help them out, but the conversation never comes up. Hiding from the monsters in the house, let a random stranger come in, twice I might add, something goes wrong, because of course it does. Driving slowly down the road using only the GPS, crack the door open and have someone let you know when you're drifting to the left a little, and shut it quickly if something makes its way to you. Leaving the keys to the car to be easily grabbed by anyone who wants out of this shit show? Tackle a hostile dude instead of just pushing or kicking him away? Why bring the supplies to the grocery store to the house when you can bring the people in the house to the grocery store? What's the point in the birds that are supposed to serve as an alarm system when the creatures are nearby if you're just gonna blindfold yourself the whole time anyway? It's a crap ton of, well, why didn't they do this or that throughout the movie? Almost every major scene is like that. On top of that, because this movie likes to jump from the present day several years ahead to the past, it basically gives away who lives and who dies, meaning it's difficult to truly get attached to any one character.
So you left and started knocking on random doors?
I only live a block away.
Great. Now we can all starve here in the maternity ward.
Sadly, it's not a very good movie, but because I love Sandra so much, in fact, most of the cast really saves this movie. I mean, you've got Trevante Rhodes, Jackie Weaver, Rosa Salazar, B.D. Wong, Lil Rel Howery. There's no shortage of talent that's trying their hardest to work with this mediocre material. And to be fair, they do kind of make it work. But at the end of the day, I just can't help but notice the wasted potential here. I wanted to like this movie more than I do, but it's just not that great. My honest rating for Bird Box, 3 out of 5.
Justice be bummed. Justice be bummed.
Whatever offends makes you scream. I want to die on Halloween.
Set in an alternate 1950s where zombies almost killed the world, but a collar now makes them obedient servants. This little kid is a loner, but his mom, Carrie Ann Moss, decides to get the family a Billy Connolly zombie, despite her husband's reservations. The kid bonds with Zombie Billy when he protects him from bullies, but at the cost of causing a small outbreak.
We should get a name for you before Mom does. I know. How about FIDO?
This was delightful. It's not as funny as it could have been, and probably not as intelligent or clever as it could have been, but for what it was, I was charmed. Already, the over-the-top colorful 50s aesthetic had me hooked. The fashion, the setting, everything puts you in a happy mood. It even opens on a little slideshow movie about the world we're about to jump into that had me giggling like a child. Even right down to the names given to the characters. Timmy. Timmy! Of course there's a 50s kid character named Timmy. What other options were there? The correct answer is none. For a story that's basically a boy and his dog story, the fact that it's a zombie, played by Billy Connolly no less, it's adorable and surprisingly violent for a feel-good flick. And Carrie Ann Moss, dude, wow. Whether she's in skin-tight black leather doing mantis kicks for days, or in a bright sundress telling a bitch-ass man to get his own beer, she steals my heart and can step on me any day. I didn't say that. You said that. For shame. Y'all need Jesus in your life.
Coming right up, dear. Not actually gonna get him another beer, are you? Get your own beer, Bill.
Are there any negatives worth considering? Not especially. I mean, like I said, it's not as funny as it could have been or as clever, but no, it's too likable of a film. But if I have to fish for some, here we go. There are far too many characters that seem to get busy with or want to get busy with zombies.
Implications unpleasant.
Yeah, and... oh! There's this little girl that Timmy talks to who seems to kinda like him. I kinda wish that ended up being some kind of cutesy buddy shenanigans type of situation. Especially since she really doesn't like what her dad makes her do. So if she were to conspire against him, I think I would have liked this movie a bit more. And you know what? For all the world building that this does, I would have loved some level of exploration outside of this town and into the territory where wild zombies roam. It likely wouldn't have fit the narrative of the story, but I guess I'm just salty that this never got a sequel where that stuff could have been explored. I am angry. I hate everything and everyone. Except Carrie Ann Moss. Never Carrie.
Not the teeth, Tammy. Not the teeth, Tammy. Good girl.
I don't have much against this movie. From a visual standpoint, it's too pleasing, the acting gives me the warm fuzzies, and the dark comedy makes me want to squee like I'm in a bad chick flick. This may not be a perfect flick, but I'm giving it my highest recommendation simply from the charm factor alone. My honest rating for FIDO, a strong 4 out of 5.
That's Mrs. Henderson. What am I supposed to tell Mom and Dad?
Thanks so much for joining me on my Halloween specials, guys. Hope you all enjoyed yourselves, have a safe and fun Halloween night, and hope to see you soon.
Something rancid in the bowl, and we'll take your restless soul. Something breathing in the hole. Heed the man behind the window. Follow the path this sleepless night. Feels so good to have a bad fright. I know a sight that will make you scream. I want to die on Halloween. 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 I want to die